Okay, when you think plants, I bet you're picturing flowers, maybe some huge trees, right? Well, today, we're going to rewind the clock. Way back. We're going to meet the original pioneers of the plant world. This is the incredible story of the plant kingdom, an epic that began in the ancient oceans long, long before a single seed was ever planted. So let's start with a really basic question. What is a plant? Seems easy enough, doesn't it? You see a tree, a flower, some grass, you think plant. But what if I told you the answer to that question is, well, it's complicated, and it's always changing?
Yeah, it's really not as simple as you think. It's kind of like there's this exclusive club, the Kingdom Plantae, and the membership rules keep getting updated. For hundreds of years, scientists have been the bouncers at the door, deciding who's in and who's out. So, to really get who's in the plant club now, we gotta look at who got kicked out over the years. And trust me, the guest list has changed a lot. So, who got the boot? Well, for a long time, the main rule was just, do you have a cell wall? If so, you were in. So fungi? Yup, they were considered plants. Some bacteria, certain protists, they got an invite too. But as our science got better, we started seeing these huge fundamental differences. And here's the real shocker for a lot of us. Cyanobacteria. That's the stuff we all learned as blue-green algae. Guess what? It's not algae. It's not even a plant. It got a whole new classification and was shown the door. So with all this shuffling around, how in the world do scientists keep track of everything? Well, they use classification systems. It's all about bringing some order to the incredible chaos of nature. But, as you're about to see, not all systems are built the same. The very first systems were what we call artificial. Think of it like organizing your bookshelf just by the color of the book covers. I mean, it might look nice, but it tells you absolutely nothing about what's inside the books, right? Early botanists did something kind of similar, grouping plants based on really superficial things like leaf shape. But today, we use what are called phylogenetic systems. This is way more like organizing that same library by author, by genre, by series. You can actually see how all the stories connect. This modern way looks at everything, the plant's anatomy, its chemistry, its DNA, to build a true, detailed family tree. And that family tree takes us right to the very roots, pardon the pun, of the plant kingdom. It's time to meet the first real heroes of our story, these simple, ancient, and totally world-changing organisms we call algae. Okay, so what exactly makes an alga an alga? Let's tick the boxes. Chlorophyll-bearing, that just means they use sunlight for food. Autotrophic is the fancy word for making their own food. Largely aquatic, pretty simple, they mostly live in water. And this next part is key, simple and thalloid. That means their body isn't divided up into true roots, stems, and leaves like a tree. It's a much more basic design. You'll find them just about everywhere there's water, from oceans to ponds, and yeah, that's right, even on the back of a sloth. Now, don't let that simple description fool you. Look at this number, 50%. That's their massive impact on our planet. Algae are responsible for at least half of all the carbon dioxide fixation on Earth. So think about this. For every 2 breaths you take, one of them comes courtesy of algae. They are the absolute foundation of nearly every aquatic food web, and they're the planet's most important oxygen factories. Incredible!
And their variety is just mind-blowing. Let's look at a few examples. On one end of the scale, you get these colonial forms, like volvox. What you're looking at isn't one single creature. It's a perfect little sphere made of hundreds, sometimes thousands of individual cells, all working together in harmony as one colony. So cool.
Then you've got a totally different body plan, filamentous algae. This is Eulothrix. Instead of a ball, the cells just line up, end to end, forming these long, beautiful thread-like chains. It's a really simple but super effective design. And then, from those tiny threads, you can jump to this. These are massive marine forms, like kelp. We're talking about giant underwater forests. Some of these guys can grow to be 100 meters tall. That's taller than a 30-story building. They're so big and complex that they even have distinct parts, a holdfast that anchors them, a stalk called a stipe, and these big leaf-like fronds that do all the photosynthesis. That just gives you a little taste of the huge range of diversity in the algae world. How algae reproduce is like its own little evolutionary story. It starts out pretty simple with what's called asogamy. You see this in Eulothrix. 2 gametes that are exactly the same size find each other and fuse. Then things get a little more complex with anisogamy.
Now the two gametes are different sizes. And finally, we get to ogamy, a word that might sound a little familiar. This is where you have a large, stationary female egg and a smaller, mobile male sperm. We see this even in algae like volvox. So yeah, the very beginnings of a reproductive strategy that would one day take over the entire planet started right here.
All right, so algae aren't just one giant green sludgy group. They're actually split into 3 main classes, and each one has its own special features and its own uses for us.
So how do you tell them apart? Well, the easiest way is just to look at them. Their color is the biggest giveaway, and that color comes from the specific pigments they use to soak up sunlight. You've got the green algae, which have chlorophyll A and B, the exact same stuff in land plants, which is why they look so green and familiar. Then there are the brown algae. They have an extra pigment called fucoxanthin, giving them that classic olive-brown color. And finally, the red algae. They have a special red pigment, phycoerythrin, which is amazing at grabbing the blue light that can reach way down deep in the ocean. Every color is a perfect adaptation to where they live. You probably don't even realize it, but I'm willing to bet you have algae in your house right now. Seriously, that seaweed wrapped around your sushi, that's porphyra, a type of red alga. Ever see a protein supplement, or even the stuff they develop for astronauts to eat in space? That could be chlorella. And you know the thickeners that make your ice cream or your makeup all smooth and creamy? Those are something called hydrocolloids, and they come from brown and red algae. Oh, and agar, the stuff scientists use in petri dishes to grow cultures. Yep, that comes from red algae too. They are this hidden but absolutely essential ingredient in our daily lives. So, for millions and millions of years, plant life was stuck in the water. But then a group of pioneers made one of the most incredible leaps in the history of life on Earth. They made the jump onto land. It's time to meet the bryophytes. This phrase right here is the absolute best way to think about them. Bryophytes are the amphibians of the plant kingdom. Just like a frog, they can live on land, in the soil, but they are completely dependent on water. They can't get away from it, especially when it's time to reproduce. These are the guys that took those very first wobbly steps out of the water. And you'll find them today in pretty much the same kinds of places: damp, humid, shady spots. They still don't have true roots or stems or leaves, but their body is definitely a step up in complexity from algae. Now, bryophytes come in 2 main styles. On the left here, you've got a liverwort, Marchantia. See how its body is this flat, sort of ribbon-like thing called a thallus? It just kind of hugs the ground. But on the right, we've got a moss, Funaria. It's got a more upright shape with a skinny little axis and these tiny leaf-like bits. And instead of real roots, they both use these simple little threads called rhizoids to hold on. They might be small, but don't underestimate their impact. Ecologically, they are huge. They're food for all sorts of animals. One type of moss, sphagnum, gives us peat, which people have used for ages as fuel and as packing material because it can hold a ton of water. And along with lichens, they are often the very first things to grow on bare rock. They break it down little by little, creating the first bits of soil so that bigger plants can eventually move in. Plus, their dense mats are like a giant sponge, soaking up rain and stopping the soil from washing away. Okay, so let's recap. We've met the algae, the undisputed masters of the water. And we have the bryophytes, the amphibians who bravely took those first steps onto land, but, could never really wander too far from the water's edge. This whole situation sets the stage for the next massive chapter in the story of plants. Think about it. These first land plants were totally tied to that watery coastline. Their dependence on water to reproduce was a huge limitation. It kept them small, it kept them stuck in damp places. So to really, truly conquer the dry continents, plants were going to need something new, a brand new invention to finally cut the cord to the water once and for all. What do you think that could have been? We'll explore that next time.